here, and I'm just going to show you guys how to clean out the carburetor on a twin opposed. They're pretty much all the same, as far as I know. There's two 1/2-inch bolts that are up in there you have to take out. They sit right back down right there, and they look like this. Take those out, and then also take these out. These are two different things, I know, because I lost one at some point in time, but take those out right there. And then also I'm about to take these out, the Phillips thing on the outside of the hood body. Alright, I got those out, and you can see it fell. It's going to want to tip over on you, so you just got to be careful. But first, you want to, before you try to take it off, there's a headlight connector down here. It's a little bit stuck. Let me put the camera down. Yeah, it just required 2 hands. So now I'm going to close this, but not all the way, so that way I can flare these out and clear some things, and then I'll set it on the ground. This is not the first time for me around this road, because if it's got a new transmission on it, then it's sure not the first time I've cleaned out the carb. So let me go ahead and get this nut off, and then I'll go from there. Make sure you lay all these parts down like they were, and then you're going to take all these little lock nuts off, or flare nuts, whatever they're called. Little fun guys. And then I just set those on top so I know where they are. And you take this whole thing out, even with the top, and then you take this out, so you know where everything goes. So that's that. You take these little 3 guys off that go in these holes, and then this thing comes off. You set these down, and you got to make sure that this tube is out, so just push on that with your thumb. Push it out the other side. That's for the it's the EGR valve or whatever. Set this somewhere safe. You're going to probably want to clean the motor just to make it look nice while everything's apart, because this motor has been taken apart and cleaned, not rebuilt necessarily, but taken apart and cleaned. So, and then you're going to want to take, there's these bolts under here. You'll need a socket for, not a drill. But I'm going to get my drill in a little right angle tool. Alright, so these are a 7/16 socket up here. There's one there and one there, and you will either have to use a socket, or the lazy way is to use one of these. They're like $35 at Home Depot, or Lowe's I think sells them too. And then you put your little adapter drive just like that, and stick that down in there, and then you've got a right angle tool. Alright, so once you get those off, your carburetor will pretty much be dangling, except for this fuel line, or linkage, and this crankcase breather for the vacuum. So let me get that breather off and the linkage. Alright, so when you disconnect your gas line from right there, there's going to be one thing left, and that's the choke. And you'll want to take a Sharpie marker and mark where the thing is located. I'll show you, but that'll help it be easier for whenever you're trying to adjust the choke when you're putting it back together. One day I was lazy with marking this one for the throttle, and I decided to take a grinder, angle grinder, and cut like a little bit out, and it didn't cut a little bit out, it cut the whole thing, and that freaking cable was like $35, so that's a waste of money. Make sure that you're not lazy. I got a carpenter's pencil here, at least. That's still being lazy, but it works better than a grinder. Alright, so you can see I got that all colored in. It's probably not easy to see, but I do. And I'm going to go ahead and loosen this nut up, but don't take it off all the way, just loosen it up, and then the thing will fall out. Now that our choke cable is loose, our carburetor's freed up and ready to go, so I'm going to go over to the parts cleaner. I'm sorry about that. Mr. Parts Cleaner is going to need to go in another parts cleaner before it cleans more parts, because it's not looking so good. A little bit dirty there. So yeah, you don't want all that rust in your carburetor. Alright guys, I got a nice clean enough pan here for what I'm going to do with it. And yes, I know you can go to the store and buy a can of carb cleaner. But guess how much this 2.5 gallon can cost? Like, what, $5? Not even that? Well, yeah. This thing, filling it up to here, about a gallon, that's like $2. That carb cleaner shit, $5. So, like, you know, if you're thinking about it, it's just a waste of time and you got to go to the store still and stuff like that. But anyway, I got yards to cut and I'm going to fill this thing with gas to clean it. Alright, I got this filled up with gas and I'm going to go ahead and start taking that apart. So first you're going to take these 4 screws off on your fuel pump and have somewhere to set them too. And you can see I don't have a place to set them. I mean, kind of, but... And then once you take those screws out, you're going to pull this off and there's going to be that. There's going to be this. And I can already see some crap in there, like up in there, like fuel line jizz. And then there's going to be this spring and this thing. You're going to have to set that aside because it's just going to get in the way. And remember, the spring goes on the inner side of the cup. You know what I'm saying? Like on top of the spring. And the spring sets in there. So, yeah. And then I'm going to take this little diaphragm off. Okay, so I noticed that when I took this diaphragm off, I can see lots of crap right there. That's on the inside of this thing. So I'm going to go ahead and switch this around in some gas as much as I can to clean it out. You don't want to see anything in these that could clog the one-way flap. And you can see right there, there is something. It's just a little white flake of plastic. Okay, so those are absolutely spotless. Now I set it upright so nothing can set down in there. And then we're going to move on to the actual carburetor itself. No, my bad. Sorry. We're going to move on to this diaphragm, which is not stiff. It's actually pretty good still. I mean, it's slightly stiff. I'm not even pointing the camera. But it's moving, so... I mean, under the pressure of the crankcase, that should be fine. And then this needs to be cleaned. Breather. Okay, guys, so now I'm going to reassemble this. Reassemble. You can see that there's a hole right there in the center. That needs to match up with this hole. And if this is the top of the carburetor, then this fuel outlet or inlet should be on the bottom. And then you're going to just match up the shapes. So there's a peg right there, and then that's going to go in that hole peg. Oh my god, these sweet bees. And that's going to set in there like that. And then this right here is going to set in there like this, with the hole facing away from the fuel thing. So that's it for that. Now let's move on to the carburetor. So this right here is a drain for the float bowl. There's still fuel in the carburetor, so we're going to take that off and drain it. Most of the fuel leaked out by me struggling to get this thing off, so there's not much in there. But as you can see, back down in there, all that sparkly stuff is pretty much crap. You don't want to see that sparkly stuff. That's like allowing the gasoline to puddle up and create a reflection spot. So I'm going to go ahead and take these 4 screws out all the way around, and then we'll open it up. You just want to very carefully just work that around to pop it open. Just put very little stress on it and pull that off. Ooh, I can already see. It's hard for you guys to see, but there is some stuff on there. I think you can see it now. That is just crap building up over time in there. And then in the bottom of here, oh my lord, it's just hideous. All that stuff sitting right there and over there. You can definitely see that piece of plastic. So that's what's clogging up our jet here and our fuel pump, and then it's not running. So I'm going to go ahead and clean everything out in here, and then we'll go from there. So next you're going to want to take this jet out. This is the jet right here. It unscrews. That's adjustable size. So I'm going to go ahead and take that out real quick. Make sure you don't use a screw gun for this part, because not like you should use a screw gun for any of this, but this is especially something you don't want to use a screw gun for. So now that we got our jet out, here's our jet, and right away I can see stuff clogged right up in there, and you can't barely see the light through it. You can kind of see the light, but not very much, so that's a bad thing. You should see light through that. So I'm going to go ahead and take a bristle on a wire brush and clean that out. I don't know if you guys can see that right there, but that came off of there. Kind of that orange looking stuff right there. All that came out of that thing. It's just crap. I got it mostly cleaned up, but I went ahead and started up the air compressor so we can get every single little fiber out of it. In the meantime, while that's loading, I'm going to take out whatever the heck that is. I don't know. It's got a screwdriver attachment on it. I'll look. Actually, that is the jet. that is, who knows what that is, but I believe that's a jet too, but I think that one of these take in fuel, and one of these take in fuel from the float bowl and put it out to the jet right there, the nozzle. But yeah, that's got a hole in it too, but it isn't clogged. So one of these is a jet, is all I know. You can see right through that thing. So I'm gonna go ahead and blow all this out and clean that in there too, because I'm sure that that's dirty. That is what I thought it is. The air comes out of this, not this hole, but the hole that's open right there, from down there. And that's actually an access point, because whenever you drain your carburetor out, you're going to drain this stuff out too, because that's actually where the fuel goes in from the into the bowl, because there's your float and your thing, but that rod sticks down in it, which I'm sure I'll clean that too. Okay, so this whole entire thing is cleaned out, so I'm going to go ahead and put my little jets in and go start on the float pin. See that? You can see right through it. That little blue dot, that's the sky. Next step, now that that's reassembled, is we're going to go ahead and take this pin, little wrist pin thing, out of the float. Just the float. These parts really need to be cleaned, because these are what let the fuel in to the float bowls. So after you pull that out, you're going to pull this whole thing out. Woo! I can already see some stuff in there. And I can see some stuff on our float pin too. That little black thing is what that's the float pin seat. Well, it sits on the float pin seat at least. So I'm going to wash all these parts out and then get that washed out real good. And then we'll go from there. Still is some stuff in this upper housing here and on here, which could eventually make its way back down to the float bowl. So I'm going to go ahead and clean this out too. Oh, and make sure that any time that you're taking off a gasket like this, it's not that important because it's a hard gasket and it likes to stay in that shape. But just like carefully move it up in every little place and move it up to where it's not going to tear. Don't like peel it, you know what I'm saying? Like it's going to break. And that's not going to be good because you're not going to have a gasket. Now this is mostly clean, so I'm going to air dry it. That's about as clean as that's going to get. No shinies, no scratches. So I'm going to clean this float pin off and this little wrist pin guy, and we'll put it back together. Alright, I got that back together. Now I'm going to put that plug back into the float bowl half. Alright, I got that plug back in, and I'm going to join the two halves together. So make sure that whenever you're putting these back in, you don't tighten them with the drill, you tighten them with the screwdriver. Alright, I got that all screwed in back together, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this spring and set the spring in here like this, and I'm going to set this part in here with that little hole facing up, and then I'm going to set this back down on it and make sure that the fuel is pointing in the opposite direction as the throttle. So this is the throttle and this is the bottom of the carburetor, so this is going to face this way. Sorry, not the opposite way, this way. And then you're going to set that on there. I got to do it carefully. Now that I got that back on, our carburetor is ready to be hooked up. Alright, so I got everything hooked up on this carburetor except for the gas line. And the reason for that is you don't want to have any unwanted crap in the gas line that you just cleaned out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this gas line off, and I'm going to lay it down on the ground. Not on the ground literally, but just close to the ground, and then we're going to let it drain out. How are we going to let it drain out? We're just going to put some gas in there. Okay, we ran into a problem now. Our gas tank itself isn't actually clean. You can see there's a little bit of crap in there that we don't want, so I'm going to have to make a vacuum hookup that does that. So instead of taking the gas tank out and washing it, I just put this handlebar, I straightened this handlebar out into a straight tube, and then pushed the brake back and duct taped it to this vacuum, and it kind of sucked pretty well. So now you probably can't see, but it's really clean in there. It's like spotless. There's absolutely nothing but a little bit of gas in there, so it's going to be good for flushing. Alright, so we got it filled up to about well, just to right here. I don't know where that is, probably like a third of the gas tank because of its shape. And we're going to put this down here and you'll see it fall out. See the gas starting to come out. Just kind of give it a little wiggle. And then I'm probably going to force some air through it to help. Alright, so I got the vacuum cleaner output hooked up to the mower here. I'm going to go ahead and switch it on. I got it switched on and you can see much more gas is coming out. But I think it's probably about flush by now. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it off. I got this thing nice and cleaned up, a little bit less dusty. Reason it's so dusty is because this cylinder has a leaky head gasket because I broke one of the bolts, cylinder head bolts. But I ended up just putting a self-sinking large sheet metal bolt, probably for a car of some sort, into it to stop it from rushing out the hole. But the head gasket is still blown from whenever there was just an open hole, because I broke the bolt on the inside by tightening it too much. So I cleaned the air filter out. It was very dirty. So got everything back together. Now I'm going to put the hood on. Alright, I topped the oil off because the oil was very low. It was below the add. And I'm going to go ahead and fire it up. Okay, so I'm going to put the choke all the way on for this and just fire it up. And we've got a dead battery, so. Alright, I got that hooked up and it's on. Put the choke back on, full throttle. Oh, gotta put the brake on. Give it a minute to turn over. Idles right off the bat. Perfect. Successful clean out.